Gracias por estar con nosotros. Oprima el botón de abajo para escuchar en español. We are providing Spanish interpretation tonight. And then at 7 p.m. we will have a Spanish only with English interpretation. And so it's about 6:01. We've got a nice group here, about 112 attendees. That's great. Hopefully we have some more stakeholders watching on Facebook Live, but we do have some ground to cover. So let's get started. I do want to introduce Mr. Jerry Moore, our Chief Academic Officer, and Dr. Shuri Washington, who is Chief in our Student and School Support Division. And we're going to be talking tonight about the ESSER funds, which are some federal dollars out of the CARES Act that is coming to school districts to really be student focused and how we can help our students over the next several years, make sure that they are caught up, make sure they are engaged. And so Mr. Moore and Dr. Washington will be sharing with us what some of the guidelines are and how much we may receive. The other thing is that we are broadcasting live on Facebook, so and this is being recorded, so you will be able to share it or view it again tomorrow. And with that, I do want to take a moment. We have a special message from Dr. Scribner before we get started, so let's check that out. Give me just 1 second. Hold on. I think we're having a issue with our. Give me 1 moment. Isn't technology great? Okay, here we go.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. This is the first of multiple town hall meetings to get your input on how Fort Worth ISD will use $261 million in federal funds that we're receiving. This money will be spent over the next 4 summers and 3 full fiscal years. These dollars will ensure a plan for a safe return to in-person instruction here in the district. We want to hear from our entire community: students, families, teachers, principals, community groups, special education and English language learner advocates, and many others. We thank you for your time and attention this evening and look forward to answering your questions and receiving your feedback. Thank you.
All right, so we got to hear from Dr. Scribner to set us up. Let me go ahead and pull up the presentation. Let's try that again. Okay, Dr. Washington, I will pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Perez. Now, I do see a couple of bars. I want to make sure that everyone can see it visually, or is it just my screen? Just want to make sure that that's displaying correctly. So I just want to say welcome to everyone, and we are so excited to have you join us this evening. We really want to hear from you. We are excited about the opportunity to provide the very best learning options and opportunities for our students. I do want to tell you a little bit about what I do. I am one of the chiefs of student and school support. And part of my job is to be able to support all of our high school principals, our middle school principals, and our elementary principals. I also support our counselors and intervention specialists, crisis management, any departments having to do with supporting campuses, as well as our extracurricular activities with athletics, as well as supporting our after-school activities. So before I begin, I will let my colleague, Mr. Moore, kind of give you an intro about what he does and how he supports our district.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Good evening, everyone. It's exciting to see so many participants joining in. I think my computer screen is showing 186 participants right now. I'm glad to see more of our community join us for the conversation. As Dr. Washington shared, my name is Jerry Moore. I am the Chief Academic Officer here in Fort Worth ISD. I oversee all of our academic programs, from teaching and learning, which is our core content areas, literacy, math, science, social studies, to our elective courses, to special education, to specialized academic support services. Anything that relates to the academics your child receives here in Fort Worth ISD, teaching and learning, falls underneath my department, and I'm proud to serve this community and support the students here. We'll look forward to talking to you more about opportunities we have with elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds this evening. But most importantly, we look forward to hearing from you. I've seen a number of great ideas already coming through in the chat. Just encourage you to continue sharing your thoughts and ideas and your feedback with some of the programs that we'll share with you this evening as well. Dr. Washington, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. And Ms. Perez, we're ready for the next slide. So I do want to begin by sharing with everyone what exactly is ESSER. And so as you probably know, the coronavirus has had a detrimental impact on many of our cities nationwide, our families and our communities. And as many of you may be aware, the CARES Act was defined to support those cities and families and communities to be able to recover from COVID. But from the CARES Act, we now have ESSER funds, as so many have already shared, which is an emergency relief for our elementary and secondary schools. And Texas was allocated over $12 billion to be able to support these school districts. Of that $12 billion, Fort Worth ISD has received more than $261 million to support learning recovery for our students in our district. Next slide, please. So how will those funds be distributed? The funds for ESSER for Fort Worth ISD will be distributed in two phases. The first phase, 2/3 of the funding, which is over $174 million, will be distributed. And then the second phase, the last third of the funding, will be $87 million, or a little bit over $87 million, to support our final allocation of over $261 million. Next slide, please. So when will these funds be available? Well, first, Fort Worth ISD must make an application to TEA in order to receive the funds. The application is due July 27, 2021, and this is a one-time allotment. So the application is for a one-time allotment for our funding. This is why it's so critical for us to hear from you tonight, our stakeholders, on what your highest hopes and your best learning environments that you would like to have our students be engaged in. Next slide, please. So the district will just have those funds, and we will begin for 4 summers and 3 full fiscal years. So that time period is from March 13, 2020, which is when we were at the beginning of the phase for the pandemic, when we were approved for a pre-award, all the way through September 30th, 2024. So this will be a full 3-year fiscal year for funds. And what are the requirements? Well, one is part of the work we're doing tonight is to be able to engage you, our stakeholders, and the public on the opportunity to have input on a plan to support our students and our community in, as you know, as they've suffered from learning loss. It's also to provide a plan for a safe return for in-person instruction and a continuity of services as we use these funds. And then also we must make sure we follow the guidelines associated with the rules and regulations for the funding, as well as ensure that we follow the financial support of effort and equity in the requirements of the funding. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what public input is required? Well, first we must begin again, which is why we're all here, is to hear meaningful input from each one of you, our stakeholders. We want to hear from our students, our families, our teachers, principals, district staff, community and civic leaders, and not only input on just how these funds will support learning in our learning environment, but also how can these funds support all student groups, our English language learner, homeless students, special education services. We want to hear every aspect of what you feel will be the best use of these funds to be able to support learning loss for all of our students. Next slide, please. So what are some of the other requirements of the plan? Well, first, we must make sure that prior to 30 days prior to receiving the grant, 30 days prior to the grant being awarded, that we have a safe return to in-person instruction and there's a continuity of services for the plan. We also must ensure that our plan has a means to monitor and ensure that we are meeting all of the needs of the students, and it is revised every 6 months based on data that we're meeting the needs of our students. Next slide, please. Another component of the plan is to ensure that the funding, maintenance of effort, the funding must be at least the same as the average amount of the past 3 years. And when we think of equity, we cannot reduce funding or staff at high poverty schools at a higher rate per student than all of the schools. So that is the purpose of the plan, to ensure that we maintain and do not drop below the amount of funding that's been prescribed, as well as ensuring that there's an equity of funding for our high poverty students compared to all students. Next slide, please. And finally, how can these funds be used? These funds can be used as a one-time or short-term spending to address learning loss recovery and to address the ongoing impacts of COVID-19 and the pandemic. It's also recommended that these funds be used as a one-time or short-time type of expenses. And also the funds must be allowable, but the district must consider how can we maintain the implementation of programs based on the funding once the funding has ended. So we want to ensure that we're able to sustain all of the programs that we've implemented in order to support our campuses. One of the things we want to do is, as we shared throughout this presentation, is to hear from you. Mr. Moore is going to share with you some of the ideas that we have, and then we would like to, again, garner your feedback on what you believe the best practices will be. Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Dr. Washington. As Dr. Washington shared, our elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds are one-time or short-term expenses intended to provide intervention and individualized support for our students as we recover from this COVID experience and as our students return back to in-person instruction. We are this evening going to share with you some ideas and thoughts around our learning recovery strategies and our learning recovery plan. However, the intent of this evening is really to hear from you. As you hear some of these suggestions, please give us your response to some of these suggestions, but also give us some of your other ideas of what your child, our students, could best benefit from as we recover from this COVID experience. As you'll see on the slide here, we have 4 major strategies, or we're calling them buckets of our learning recovery plan. Our plan is to make sure that we're providing support to our teachers so that our teachers can provide high quality daily instruction to our students. We want to make sure that we have rigorous instructional materials so that the work our students are doing in their classroom is at a level that's going to be able to meet the individualized need for each student, especially those students who are coming back after being disconnected from school for an extended period of time. We want to look at opportunities where we can create more time for learning in our classrooms and for our students. And we also want to empower our parents by providing them the resources that they may need to help support their students in their recovery from lost instructional opportunity. Next slide, please. We will go through each of these 4 buckets. We'll either give a brief explanation of the bucket or even provide a couple of examples of our thinking around what this investment could look like. So please continue to share more information in the chat as you hear these ideas and respond. So supporting our teachers here in Fort Worth ISD. We want to make sure that we are building the capacity within our teachers to respond to areas that we know our students are needing support. As you'll see here, effective instruction in reading, language arts, and math are the 2 main areas that we're seeing our students that are regressing from the COVID experience. We want to make sure that we are not only providing our teachers with the professional learning, but also with the resources and the tools that they need to be able to meet the individualized needs of our students. Individualizing support includes delivering interventions to our students, interventions and individualized supports that meet the need of each student, not just a one-size-fits-all approach in the classroom, but actually looking at what are some areas that our students need some individualized and one-on-one support. This could be one-on-one with the teacher. This could be with the teacher assistant. This could be with a tutor. This could be tutoring during the school day, after school, or before school. Those are all ideas we would like to hear from you. And then finally, in the bucket of providing support to our teachers, there may be the need to be able to have more than just the teacher in the classroom working with students and supporting the learning of our students. We may need to be adding additional instructional support staff. An example here could be teacher assistants in our kindergarten classrooms. We know that works successfully in our pre-K classrooms. Could that support our youngest learners as they return for kindergarten? That could be tutors during the school day or school. That could be a variety of different instructional support personnel from the district level on campus, working in the classroom side by side with teachers and with students. Next slide. Our second strategy, our second bucket of work is rigorous instructional materials available to all of our students and all of our teachers. We know that our students need to have access to high quality instructional materials, and we know we have an opportunity for improvement in this area. I wanted to share 4 examples of what high quality rigorous instructional materials could look like and get your feedback. The first example could be our math curriculum, math materials in kindergarten through 8th grade. We've had the same math curriculum for the past 6 years here in Fort Worth ISD. The state is on an adoption cycle. We have the opportunity here that we could be looking at new core instructional materials in math as we look to provide high quality instruction for our students in their return to in-person instruction. That's an example of something that we could invest in now that would benefit students not just here in 1 or 2 years, but for a longer term impact as well. We've been doing a lot of work in the area of literacy, adopted a new literacy framework. We have new instructional strategies that we've adopted across the district. We've invested in our teachers and their professional learning through our House Bill 3 reading academies. We now have the opportunity to run a pilot of a new literacy curriculum that better aligns to our House Bill 3 reading academy. In Target is working with specific students and with tools for specific teachers, really meet the needs of our students that are struggling with their literacy development. The investment is not just in core instruction either. It's not just literacy and math. We also want to look at our students in various student groups in specific areas of earlier. We're looking at English language learners, students receiving special education services. An example that we have here of supporting some of our specialized groups is having accessibility toolkits available for our special education students. An accessibility toolkit is a resource, online resource and physical resource that students could take with them to each of their classrooms that provides an accommodation or a modification to their learning. We know that students must be learning through any type of accommodation that they receive on a daily basis if they're going to effectively implement that in any type of assessment. And increasing the tools that we have in the hands of our teachers and our students to have that accessibility to the learning, accessibility toolkits would really be a benefit, not just to students receiving special education services, but actually all students across the district. And in addition to this, we also know that we have an opportunity to invest in some of our high interest programs, some of the programs that really attract students to come to our schools, some of those programs that students want to come to school and want to learn. But we gave an example of fine arts here. We have an opportunity to invest in new and updated fine arts equipment for our students as they come back to our music and our art and our dance classrooms. But we also have the opportunity to invest in other elective courses that we know students are interested in. It could be career and technical education courses, materials for students to have hands-on learning experiences. It could be athletics, health, PE, wellness. All of those are ideas that are potential here that we could invest more rigorous instructional materials to support the learning. We'd love to hear your feedback on any of these ideas or other ideas that we may not have shared here that you think would benefit your children, our students here in Fort Worth ISD. Next slide, please. The third strategy that we wanted to share with you is an opportunity to create more learning time for our students. Earlier this spring, we released a survey to parents, and we actually asked our parents in that survey if they would be interested in extended summer learning this summer, or if they would be interested in an extended school day, or excuse me, an extended school year next school year. We're in the midst of rolling out the first step of this plan. As you know, we're going to have summer learning opportunities this summer, open to all students. Any student who feels like they could benefit from additional instructional time this summer, not just those students that are struggling, but any student that may be interested in an extra month of instruction. Well, we have the opportunity here with some of our ESSER funds, one summer, but to do that for the next 3 years, to invest in summer learning so that we really spend the time to recover lost learning time for our students. In our survey earlier this spring, we asked parents if they were interested in an extended school year calendar. We did not ask you, however, if you may be interested in an extended school day. An example that we have here, an idea could be to add instructional time by increasing the instructional day by 30 minutes. Is this something that parents, you would be interested in? Is this something that our community would be interested in to add instructional time for our students? Adding 30 minutes of a day would equal or equate to 12 instructional days throughout the entire school year. There's one way that we could get more instructional time for students just by adding 30 minutes into the school day. We also saw earlier in the chat, we have this as an example, that we have the opportunity to expand our after-school and tutoring programs. We know that Fort Worth ISD has run successful after-school programs for a number of years, but this presents an opportunity that we could expand the number of schools that have after-school programs. A safe, structured environment where students can continue to learn after the school day. And it's not just academic, it's also enrichment, it's also athletic, it's also fine arts opportunities for students to really learn some of the areas that they need with their academics, but also learn some of those high interest programs as well. Is that something that would be of interest? Something that we could give us an opportunity that we could have tutoring, not just before or during the school day, but students that are staying after school could have an individualized tutor. Tutoring is not something that we want to add on to teachers next year. We really want our teachers to concentrate on what they're doing in their classrooms for daily instruction. After school tutoring is something that we can work with outside companies, outside providers to really be able to individualize the needs of each of our students. And then the final example that we have here is acceleration academies. The idea that for particular students and for us for next year, what we're looking at is our earliest learners, our 1st through 3rd grade students. How could we add some instructional days, weekend time, holiday time, different opportunities throughout the year, still looking at what that would look like, but how could we add up to 14 days of additional instruction for targeted students who are needing to recover from some lost learning opportunity? We'd love your feedback on any of these or other ideas that you think would benefit our students moving forward. Next slide, please. The last bucket we wanted to share with you as a part of our recovery strategies is empowering our parents. One of the things that we know is that our parents are ready to support their students in being able to get back into the school building, to get focused back on learning. And how do we make sure not only do our teachers and our students have the resources that they need, but our parents have the resources they need. We want to provide an opportunity to engage our families in the learning process and the educational process, but also provide some wraparound services for students and for families, so that as we transition back into school, as we transition back to focus on really high quality instruction, they have the social emotional wellness to be able to focus on their learning. One of the areas we want to make sure is clear is that attendance is important. We want to have a proactive, positive attendance approach for next year that really gets our students in our classroom, that makes our students and our parents understand how important it is that they're at school learning every day, and that we reward our students for being in our classrooms. We know that our students are going to be focused on literacy and math. They're focusing on their college and career readiness as well. We know we're going to invest in resources in our classroom, but how can we have resources available for our families as well that helps our parents to support their students with their literacy learning and their math learning? How do we support our parents to make sure that they're making connections for their students that are getting ready to graduate from Fort Worth ISD and look for those college and career opportunities? What comes next after they're in Fort Worth ISD schools? We have an opportunity to invest in social emotional learning and support for our families, our mental and emotional well-being of our students and our families. What are areas that we could invest in this resource for our students? And then finally, counseling, mental health, wellness resources. These are all areas that also support our students. Next slide, please. Wanted to share this quick link and QR code. This is a link to a survey. While we're getting your feedback in the chat today, while we'll have a number of conversations with different groups over the next few weeks to get input on what could be some possible strategies we implement for high quality learning as we return, we also want to hear, we want your feedback. We're asking everybody that's on the call today, just take your phone real quick and take a picture of that QR code. We'd like for you, our parents, our community members, we'd like for everybody to complete this survey and give us your thoughts, but we'd especially like for you to share this link with your students. We'd like to hear from our students as well. We know that if parents and students sit down together, both of you fill out a survey, give us your thoughts. We're going to have a more comprehensive plan for how we can support our students as we return to in-person instruction. I think that was my last slide. I think I'm going to kick it back over to Jennifer so that she can lead us if there's any other comments or thoughts that we have.
Lots of comments. The chat was just blowing up as you were going through the presentation, which is exactly what we wanted to see tonight. So I appreciate everyone who's taking the time to share their thoughts. I did want to kind of go back over a few things. So again, this is a one-time short term. What does that mean in terms of implementing maybe a new program, a new strategy, or the possibility of hiring some additional staff?
So thank you, Jennifer, for the question. Yes, one-time short-term means it gives us an opportunity that we've identified some areas based on the pandemic that we can get that one-time, for lack of a better word, boost to be able to address those areas of need that have been identified from the pandemic. But then once we've gotten our kids back on track and over a 3-year, which the grant is over 3 years, once the 3-year period ends, either our students have met the needs that they were pre-pandemic or even beyond, or we as a district are able to sustain the support that's provided by the grant. So it is not something that will go past the 2024 school year. So that's what we mean by one time. And within that 3-year time frame, this support can be phased in over 3 years, or it can be one aspect of the grant that supports the needs of our students, and then that would be the end. So that's what we mean by one time.
Okay, great. And then, Mr. Moore, what about program evaluation? What like anything that's implemented that we decide to do, how will that be monitored and evaluated for the public? I saw that come up.
That's a great suggestion, and something that we've really been thinking about as we go into planning around our ESSER recovery plan. Our plan right now is to have a 3-year implementation, so we're not just looking at it on a year-by-year basis, but to have a comprehensive, if we have funding available for the next 3 years, how do we start this summer and really have a solid plan? What we don't want to do is just say, hey, we're going to do these new programs and we hope it works. What we're looking at right now to identify areas of need are our student data. What does our progress monitoring assessments tell us about our students? We did have students that took STAR assessments this year. However, it's not counting for accountability. We did encourage students to take that test so we can see where they are in comparison to state standards. But we've also maintained our NWEA MAP assessment. We give that 3 times a year. That's based on national norms and national standards that tell us whether or not a student is making the progress they need to in the academic school year. All of the area that we're looking at is going to be based in students and how we're getting positive results from the outcomes of our students in the classroom. And we'll have a cadence, a mechanism that we come back to our school board. Any of the new programs that we implement, we will be not only data that told us this was a need to implement a new program, but what are the measurements that we're going to have using student level data, using teacher feedback, using implementation data, and we'll actually be reporting that to the board. That will be a public conversation. We'll host that on our website so that our families can see here's the progress that we're making with anything new that we implement. And we'll study that throughout the year. And each year as a part of this 3-year plan, we'll say, is this something that's getting us the results that we're looking for? And if it's not, we'll look at different strategies. The important thing to remember about our ESSER plan is we start with the intention behind it, but it doesn't mean we're stuck there. This is not a static plan. We can make some changes as we see these are areas that we need some adjustments. It will be a living plan to meet the needs of our students.
Great, thank you for that explanation. So a couple of things that came up early in the chat. One of the things was we're still in, the pandemic is not over. And, we are still going to have to be conscious of things moving forward. Restroom upgrades came up quite a bit early on in the chat. The soap, the handless faucets, making sure that we have is that a possibility with these funds?
Yes, thanks, Jennifer. That's an excellent question. And just like when we first began the pandemic, we designed our Fort Worth ISD forward to ensure that we had safety protocols implemented. One of the requirements of the plan is to ensure that we have a safe return to school plan. And that safe return to school plan will be similar to our Fort Worth ISD forward, where we outline all of the processes and procedures that we will need to ensure that our students can return to school and be in a safe environment, not only just physically, but academically as well.
Thank you. And then another student-teacher ratio was a hot topic in the chat. Any thoughts on that?
Certainly. I do think that is definitely an area that we're already looking at, knowing that we are looking at specific programs to continue to engage in some of our programs, whether it be need to staff more teachers to meet the needs of students, whether it be some of our fine arts or elective classes that we want to maintain programs at campuses. We're looking at all of those different areas to invest staff back purposefully, not just say, let's reduce class size, but have an actual purpose for when we're adding staff back to campuses to support students as they return. I saw a lot of the comments in the chat about smaller class sizes will be a benefit to all students, not just an individual campus or an individual group. We agree with that, and that will be one of the things that we look at as we move forward in the plan.
And thank you for addressing fine art specifically. You know, there were several comments in the chat about, you know, we offer a lot of fantastic fine arts options. You know, one of the other things was intervention specialist. I saw that come up several times in the chat, and not just, you know, full-time intervention specialists were mentioned. You know, so especially as we're kind of coming back and, you know, our children have been in all kinds of different environments and, you know, have dealt with it, you know, in many different ways. I know as a parent, my children, you know, struggled this year. And so thank you for providing that question from the chat, because I thought that was great. And you mentioned it in your presentation as well. One of the other things that I thought was really interesting, someone commented on, was individual outreach programs for students. You know, I think the way they made it sound like, you know, we have these individualized plans for students and, you know, a comprehensive approach to all their needs.
Yes, exactly. And that kind of coincides with your comments around the intervention specialist. We know that our students have multiple needs, not just social emotional, but their physical needs. So that's part of this work, and it's really good to receive this feedback, because part of the designs that we're thinking about and would love your input on, what do our students need as far as physical supports, social emotional? Do we need additional intervention specialists? We've talked about social workers. We would love anything that we feel that our students need for individual support. We're open to that, and that's a part of the funding that can be provided within the ESSER plan. So this is why we love this feedback. Keep it coming. We're taking notes, and we will add this to part of our planning and bring this back to you for feedback again.
Yeah, free meals for all was one of the things. And I know that many of our schools do participate in the community eligibility program, but we still have some campuses where parents have to fill out a free and reduced lunch form. So that has come up several times in the chat as well, free meals for all. Another one that I thought was great came on earlier in the chat, was about, you know, parent courses. You know, I think one of the things that, you know, we've seen in, especially this past year, is, you know, we still have a lot of people in our community who need some help with their computer skills. They may have a phone, but you know, maybe they don't know how to use it to its full advantage in their lives. So that was one that I thought was really great. And then teacher professional learning. You know, how can that be stronger? One person mentioned mentorship for teachers. Another person recently mentioned mentorship for students. You know, that's something that could be explored. I know we have lots of partners in the community who may want to step up and do that type of work.
Yeah, Jennifer, I appreciate you calling that one out specifically. I do think one of the things that we need to understand as we progress during this time is that professional learning for teachers is not just sitting in a classroom and getting learning from a provider, but the best professional learning that our teachers can go through is actually embedded into their job on basis and the work that's actually happening in our schools. One of our ideas right now when it comes to professional learning is how do we invest more in our teachers at the campus, lead teachers, grade level chairs, our lead content teachers, our department chairs, learn those teachers that are actually in the same schools with other teachers working with the same kids into these experts that can support the teaching and learning that's going on in their classrooms. I think that's one of the strategies that we're looking at, is investing not just in, we're providing more offerings on a Saturday summer. We want to continue to have those offerings for our teachers, but how to actually invest in our teachers learning in their school buildings, in the job that they're doing, and have them impact more of our teachers in our schools. So that's one of the strategies we'll be looking at here as well.
Thank you. And another thing, I just wanted to remind everyone who's watching, this is on Facebook Live. It can be viewed afterward. It's also being recorded and will be available on YouTube tomorrow. I do want to go ahead and get in just a few last things because we do have another session beginning at 7. So we want to wrap up with enough time for us to transition to that session. Do y'all have any last comments? We still have lots of questions in the chat. You know, the chat is being saved. And so we will try to answer some of these in a FAQ style online. Mr. Moore, would you like to leave any last remarks?
I'd just like to go back and encourage everyone to not only continue to put your thoughts in the chat, but actually complete our survey. Want to remind you of the 4 buckets that we're really investing in. How do we support our teachers? How do we make sure we have high quality curriculum in the hands of our students and our teachers? How do we make sure that we're looking at opportunities for more learning time for our students? And how do we invest in our parents and support and empower our parents to be able to support their children as they return to school? I think if you have any suggestions or ideas in that area, please share with us. Please put the information in our survey, and we'll look forward to coming back to you with a comprehensive plan that really listens to the feedback you're giving us today.
Thank you. And Dr. Washington.
Thank you. I just echo the reflection of Mr. Moore. We're really excited to, first of all, for this opportunity to be able to support our students and provide the very best learning opportunity and environment to support our teachers and our staff. We know this pandemic is just not isolating a few people, but all. And so it is very critical that we hear back from you and all stakeholders to share this QR code with others so that we can get their feedback, that this plan will be based on what you guys feel is the very best opportunities. And so we want you to continue to provide feedback to us and make sure that we are able to capture your responses to be able to build a plan that's going to best support our students and our community and our faculties.
Thank you so much to both of you for your time tonight. Thank you everyone who is tuning in. We will be preparing for our Spanish presentation in the next 15 minutes, so you're welcome to drop off or stay on. Either way, we appreciate you, and please keep those comments coming, and share the survey with your friends, share the videos with your friends, because this is very important and we want to hear from each and every one of you. Thank you.